"You don't belong here." That's what Vanessa Carter thought the moment she saw her father's new wife. She didn't say it out loud, but the look in her eyes screamed it. It was supposed to be a warm welcome dinner after her father's honeymoon. Instead, it felt like a silent war at the dining table. Camille, elegant, composed, and black, walked into Vanessa's Palm Beach mansion with grace. But Vanessa, she saw a stranger, a threat, a woman who, in her mind, had no business sitting at the same table, let alone wearing a ring from Richard Carter, the tech CEO who raised her. What happened next? Let's just say, judgment has a funny way of backfiring, especially when you underestimate the wrong woman. Drop a comment if you've ever been misjudged for how you look, or prove someone wrong without saying a word. This story's just getting started. The dining table looked like a magazine cover. Crystal glasses, candlelight, a gold-trimmed charcuterie board, but beneath the perfect surface, the tension was sharp enough to slice through steel. Vanessa Carter sat at the head of the table, swirling her glass of red wine slowly, like a queen in her own court. Her father, Richard, sat to her left, and Camille, the new Mrs. Carter, to the right. Camille smiled politely. Her movements were graceful, her posture flawless. But Vanessa watched her like a hawk, every blink cataloged, every breath measured. "So, Camille," Vanessa began, voice sugary sweet, "what exactly did you do before all this?" Camille tilted her head. "I worked in real estate development," she said calmly. "Before that, corporate law." Law," Vanessa echoed, eyebrows raised. "That's impressive. What firm?" Richard shot his daughter a warning look, but Camille didn't flinch. "Holland and White, Manhattan." That stopped Vanessa for a moment. That was a real firm, elite, competitive. But instead of backing down, she smiled wider. "Oh, that's where Dad's company used to get sued all the time. I guess you were on the other side of the table, huh?" A sharp pause. Camille met her gaze. Calm, poised, but there was steel behind her eyes now. "Sometimes, but mostly I help startups avoid being sued in the first place." Richard cleared his throat. "Vanessa, this is supposed to be a welcome dinner." "I am welcoming her," Vanessa replied, her voice still smooth. "I'm just getting to know her. Isn't that what family does?" She turned back to Camille with a glint of cruelty. "Just making sure you're here for the right reasons. Dad's been through a lot. The last thing he needs is someone ambitious." Camille set down her fork. Not loud, not harsh, just quiet, intentional. She folded her napkin slowly and looked straight at Vanessa. "Ambition isn't a bad thing, Vanessa. It built your father's empire, and mine too." The air thinned. The candles flickered. Vanessa blinked. "Yours?" Camille didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she took a sip of water and looked toward Richard. He nodded once, almost like permission. But the truth bomb hadn't dropped yet. That was coming. For now, Vanessa sat back, smirking. In her mind, she was still in control. She still believed Camille was just another woman who'd married up. And Camille, she was just getting started. The steak was barely touched. The wine poured but ignored. There was too much heat in the room, and none of it came from the food. Vanessa leaned forward, resting her elbows on the edge of the table like a chess player about to strike. "Let's not pretend," she said, her voice finally losing the sugary coating. "You married him for his money." Richard stiffened. Camille didn't blink. "Excuse me?" she asked calmly. Too calmly. "You heard me," Vanessa pressed. "You saw a lonely, aging CEO and figured he'd be your golden ticket. I mean, come on, a luxury Palm Beach wedding? Private staff? Matching Teslas in the driveway?" She gestured toward Camille's diamond ring, glinting under the chandelier. "You didn't earn that." The room snapped silent. Richard set his fork down. "Vanessa, enough." "No, Dad," she said, turning toward him now. "You don't see it. You never see it. You've always had a blind spot for women who know how to manipulate." "You think I'm being manipulated?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," she said, "and I'm the only one here brave enough to say it." There was a pause, a long, tight silence. Then Camille stood up slowly, not in anger, but with intention. She took the linen napkin from her lap and placed it neatly on the table. She straightened her back and finally let the smile fade from her face. "You know," she said, looking directly at Vanessa, "I came here tonight hoping to build something with you, hoping to start this new chapter of our family with a little grace." She turned to Richard for a beat, then back. "But clearly, you're not ready for that. So if you're going to call me a gold digger, at least get the story right." Vanessa narrowed her eyes. Camille walked to the sideboard, picked up her purse, and pulled out a sleek black leather folder. She opened it, slid a page across the table toward Vanessa. A printed profile. "Forbes, 40 women to watch. That's me. Ikiben on Doku's." Vanessa looked down. Her eyes scanned the article. Camille Washington, founder of CW Holdings, a multi-state real estate firm with over $60 million in assets. Her heart dropped. Camille kept going. "I started with nothing. My parents were school teachers in Atlanta. I got into Columbia Law on a scholarship, worked my way up, started my first property investment with a single-unit fixer-upper in Decatur. Sold it. Rolled the profits into my second, then third, then a portfolio. Now, I own over 200 units across Florida and Georgia." She leaned forward slightly. "That ring on my finger? I could have bought it 5 times over." Vanessa was frozen, hands tight on the stem of her wineglass, face pale. Camille's tone softened, but her gaze stayed firm. "You thought I was after your father's money, but the truth is, Vanessa, I am money." Richard sat back in his chair, arms crossed. "I told you not to make assumptions." Vanessa didn't speak. She couldn't. She looked down again at the article, then at Camille, then back to her wine. Her mouth opened, closed, no sound. She'd built her entire identity around being the one with power, the one with taste, the one who knew the game. But she had just accused a self-made millionaire, a black woman who had clawed her way to the top, of being a parasite. And worse, she had done it out loud. Camille walked past her slowly and whispered, not with malice, but clarity. "It's not your fault that you didn't know, but it is your responsibility to stop assuming you do." And with that, she left the room. No drama, no raised voice, just grace and power. Vanessa sat alone in the silence she had created, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel in control. She felt small, not because Camille was rich, but because she had been wrong. Loudly, publicly, and unforgivably wrong. The silence after Camille left wasn't just awkward, it was deafening. Vanessa stared at the article still lying in front of her, her eyes fixed on Camille's headshot, confident, radiant, powerful. The words blurred as her pulse pounded in her ears. She didn't notice Richard had left the table until he returned minutes later. This time, without the warmth he usually carried when around her. He stood by the dining room doorway, arms crossed, watching her. "So," he said flatly, "are you proud of yourself?" Vanessa flinched. She had heard that tone before, but not in years. Not since she was a teenager who wrecked his Porsche and lied about it. The kind of disappointment that doesn't need to be yelled to be felt. "I didn't know," she murmured. "No," he replied. "You didn't care to know." He walked past the table, picking up his untouched plate. His movements were methodical, quiet, but tense. "You sat there and judged a woman you never bothered to ask about. You assumed because of how she looks, where she came from, that she must have needed me to survive." Vanessa looked down at her lap. Her voice cracked slightly. "It's just, everything happened so fast. You got married without even talking to me." Richard turned to her, jaw tight. "I did. You ignored my calls for 3 months. You refused to meet her before the wedding. And when I told you she was black, your exact words were, 'Dad, are you having a midlife crisis?'" Her stomach twisted. She remembered saying that. Thought it was just sarcasm. She hadn't realized how deep it cut. "You know what hurts the most?" Richard continued, his voice quiet. "You treated her like a threat, not because she did anything wrong, but because you couldn't accept the possibility that a woman like her could exist with elegance, success, and strength, without needing your father's money." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," he interrupted, and she knew it the second she walked in this house. "You need to decide who you are, Vanessa, Because the woman I raised isn't someone who cuts others down to feel taller. He didn't wait for a reply. He simply walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her shame. An hour passed before Vanessa moved. She found herself pacing the hallway, unsure whether to stay or leave. Her heels clicked against the marble floors. A sound that once made her feel powerful now felt loud and unnecessary. She stopped outside the library door, half open. Inside, Camille sat on the couch by the fireplace, a glass of water in hand, flipping through a book. No tears, no visible anger, just silence and composure. Vanessa hesitated, then knocked gently on the doorframe. Camille looked up. "Can I come in?" Vanessa asked, voice hoarse. Camille nodded once. Vanessa stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. She walked over to the armchair across from Camille, but didn't sit. "I was awful," she began. "I judged you. I made assumptions. I tried to humiliate you, and I ended up humiliating myself." Camille didn't reply, not right away. She set the book aside and looked at Vanessa directly. "Why?" The word wasn't aggressive, it was honest. "Director." Vanessa swallowed. "Because I was insecure. I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought I had it figured out. And when you walked in here so calm, so composed, I realized I had never seen someone so powerful without having to prove it." Camille's face remained unreadable. "I've always wanted to be seen as strong," Vanessa continued. "But strength that's quiet, that unnerved me, because I didn't know how to respect it." Finally, Camille spoke. "You don't have to like me, Vanessa. I'm not here to replace anyone. I married your father because I love him. That's it. But I won't apologize for being who I am." "You shouldn't," Vanessa said. "And I am sorry for everything." Camille's expression softened, slightly, not forgiving yet, but open. She nodded once. "Then let's see where we can go from here." Vanessa sat down, hands clasped in her lap. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like the most important person in the room. And she was okay with that, because tonight she had finally seen what real strength looked like, and it wore a quiet smile. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Carter estate, casting long, golden stripes across the marble floors. The house was still. The usual bustle of staff preparing breakfast was replaced by a quiet calm, almost as if the air itself knew something had shifted. Vanessa awoke early, not out of habit, but from something heavier than routine. Shame, yes, but also clarity. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Her group chats, full of designer handbags, dating gossip, and shallow brunch debates, suddenly felt empty. She turned the screen face down. Something inside her had cracked open the night before. She didn't know what to call it. Humility, growth, maybe just awakening. She took a deep breath and stood. In the kitchen, she found Camille, not in full glam or tailored loungewear, but in a simple cream sweater, her hair tied back in a silk scarf, pouring coffee and flipping through a stack of investor reports. Vanessa froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. Camille glanced up. "Morning." Vanessa nodded. "Morning." An awkward beat passed before Camille gestured toward the empty mug beside her. "You want some?" Vanessa nodded again. "Please." She walked over and took the seat across from Camille at the kitchen island. The quiet between them wasn't hostile now, just uncertain, like strangers on the edge of something neither could name. Vanessa glanced at the report spread out. Graphs, property forecasts, detailed market breakdowns across Florida counties. "You do this every morning?" she asked. Camille gave a half smile. "Part of owning 3 real estate firms." Vanessa let out a short breath. "I barely manage my rent." They both chuckled lightly, a small thread of connection pulling taut between them. "You know," Vanessa said after a pause, "I used to think being rich was about what you wore, what you posted. Who knew your name?" Camille took a slow sip of coffee. "And now," Vanessa met her eyes, "now I think it's about peace." Camille nodded. "Peace, control, independence. Being able to walk into a room and not need to explain yourself? That's wealth." Vanessa rested her elbows on the counter. You don't try to impress anyone. That's intimidating. I'm not trying to intimidate, Camille replied. I'm just done performing for people who already made up their minds. Vanessa looked down, guilt creeping up again. Like me, Camille softened. Like a lot of people. There was a pause. Then Vanessa took a breath. I want to learn from you about business, real estate, how you did all of this. I don't want to just inherit. I want to build something. Camille raised an eyebrow. That was unexpected. You sure? She asked. It's not glamorous. It's early mornings, boring numbers, people underestimating you. I'm used to being underestimated, Vanessa said, but not for the right reasons. Maybe it's time I change that. Camille studied her. Something in Vanessa's eyes, the arrogance that once gleamed like polished glass, was gone, replaced by something raw, but real. Okay, Camille said. You can start with the cap rates on multifamily units in Broward County. Vanessa blinked. Right now? Camille smirked. You said you wanted to learn. Vanessa grinned, grabbing a report. Bring it on. That afternoon, Richard returned from his board meeting to find the two women seated side by side on the patio, laptops open, surrounded by spreadsheets, cold coffee mugs, and a shared basket of croissants. He stopped in his tracks, blinking. Camille looked up and waved him over. We're calculating ROI scenarios, she said. Vanessa added, and debating zoning laws in Miami-Dade. Richard raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Only if we decide to take over your company next, Camille teased. He laughed and sat down with them, the tension from the night before replaced by something lighter. Easier. Not perfect, not yet, but promising. Vanessa looked up at her father, her tone serious now. Dad, I was awful to her. I know that. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I'm trying. Richard reached over and squeezed her hand. That's all I ever wanted. Camille nodded gently. Growth isn't linear, but it starts with owning your steps. Vanessa smiled. A real one this time, not the practiced kind. I still have a lot to unlearn. Don't we all? Camille said, raising her coffee in a mock toast. Welcome to the club. Over the next few days, something remarkable began to unfold. Vanessa started waking up early, not for spin class or influencer brunches, but to sit beside Camille and study contracts, tax strategies, and property maps. She asked questions. She listened. She made mistakes, got corrected, and kept coming back. Camille didn't coddle her. She challenged her, and Vanessa didn't resent it. She appreciated it. Richard watched from a distance, quietly moved. He had feared when he married Camille that Vanessa would never accept her. He had feared the collision of old pride and new beginnings, but somehow the fire between them had forged something stronger. Not a fairy tale, but a foundation, the kind real families are built on. 3 months later, the Carter estate looked the same from the outside. Same marble driveway, same ocean breeze, same skyline melting into the sea. But inside, everything had changed. There was no announcement, no dramatic speech, no emotional Instagram post, just small shifts, quiet but unmistakable. The wine fridge, once stocked with flashy labels Vanessa could barely pronounce, now shared space with legal pads and property brochures. The social calendar chalkboard in Vanessa's room had been replaced with a whiteboard filled with terms like net yield, escrow release, and projected ROI. Camille never pointed these things out. She didn't need to. Change wasn't something she demanded. It was something she embodied. So naturally, it made others want to rise too. One afternoon, Richard stood by the kitchen window, watching the two women walk down the garden path, each carrying a leather folder and iced coffee in hand. They paused at the far end of the garden where Camille had recently had a small greenhouse installed. Her personal project, a space for growth and patience. He smiled to himself. There had been a time he feared introducing Camille into his daughter's life would fracture everything. But what happened was better than he ever imagined. Vanessa hadn't just learned to tolerate Camille. She had learned to respect her, to admire her, to change because of her. Not for Camille's approval, but because of the mirror Camille had quietly held up to her. And that was a kind of legacy no amount of money could ever match. Later that week, Camille sat alone on the patio, watching the late afternoon sun stretch across the sky. A warm breeze stirred the edge of her linen dress. She heard soft footsteps behind her. It was Vanessa. No heels today, just flats and a notebook in hand. "Got a minute?" Vanessa asked. Camille nodded, gesturing to the seat beside her. Vanessa sat silent for a few moments, then opened her notebook to a page marked with a small star in the corner. "I've been thinking about something," she said. Camille waited. "I don't think I ever really knew what strength looked like," Vanessa admitted. "I used to think it meant always speaking first, always being the loudest, the most confident in the room." She looked at Camille. "But you walk into a room and don't need attention. You don't need to prove anything. And somehow that makes you the strongest person there." Camille smiled. Not smugly, not modestly, just warmly. "You figured it out faster than most." Vanessa laughed lightly. "Took me long enough." A beat. Then she said, "I want to build something of my own. I don't want to just follow your steps. I want to create my own path. With what you've taught me." Camille turned to her. "Then let's draw your blueprint." Vanessa exhaled like she'd been holding that hope in for years. A few weeks later, Vanessa stood before a small room in downtown Miami. A newly leased office space, bare walls, 2 desks, and a fresh coat of paint. On the glass door outside was a new name, VC Property and Design. Her name, her vision. But when she walked in that morning, she found a single envelope on the desk, marked in Camille's handwriting. Inside was a simple card and a check. "Seed Capital. Consider this your first investor. No expectations, just belief." "See." Vanessa sat down, eyes brimming, heart full. It wasn't just money, it was trust. And that meant more than any inheritance ever could. Back at the Carter estate that night, a family dinner was set. Not catered, not extravagant. Just grilled chicken, salad, and laughter. Camille poured water while Richard uncorked a bottle of wine. Vanessa walked in wearing jeans and a blazer, no longer trying to impress, just showing up as herself. She handed Camille a framed photo. It was from the garden. Camille with her hand resting lightly on Vanessa's shoulder, both women laughing at something unseen. Vanessa had captioned it in gold ink. "The woman who taught me that real queens never need a crown." Camille looked at it for a long moment, then hugged her, not tightly, but deeply. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't a story about rivalry. It wasn't even about race, or wealth, or pride. It was about 2 women, one seasoned, one still becoming, meeting not in conflict but in truth, where one woman's legacy became another woman's foundation. And that truly is how kingdoms are built, quietly, powerfully, together. We live in a world where appearances are loud and assumptions come fast. But sometimes the strongest people are the ones who walk in quietly and change everything, without ever raising their voice. Camille didn't need to defend her worth. She lived it. And Vanessa, she didn't just apologize, she transformed. Because real growth isn't about grand gestures, it's about reflection, about unlearning, about having the courage to admit, "I was wrong." You see, it's not weakness to question what you've been taught. It's strength to choose a better way, even if it humbles you. And maybe that's the legacy we should all aim for. To be the kind of person whose presence teaches others not just how to speak louder, but how to listen better. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been misjudged, underestimated, or had to grow through discomfort, you're not alone. Drop a speech bubble in the comments and share your moment. Let's build a space where stories like this are not rare, they're reminders.